I wanted to ask you, what do you feel is the hardest thing you've had to do in order to be who you are today?
I think continuing to have the belief in myself and not letting that veer off since I was young, since I've been told from my teachers that I would never amount to nothing. The bullying or the things that you face, the adversity you face, the discrimination, and just continuing to keep your head up, continuing to march on ahead towards your dream and never losing sight of that. I think that's definitely for sure the most difficult thing is keeping your goal and your eyes set on that and not being distracted, not giving up. I think the easiest thing in life is to give up on whatever you're focused on or whatever you're hopeful for. The hardest thing is to keep going, but we have to continue to hold on. And I would imagine for so many people out there, that is probably the most difficult thing.
I think people look at you and they assume that you never have to make that choice, right? They see someone in your position, someone who's achieved what you've achieved, and the assumption can be, oh yeah, but he's the greatest. He was just always that way, and he doesn't have to make that choice every day. But as you said, since the beginning of your life, whether it's childhood, whether it's breaking into a sport that wasn't set up for you, there have been so many moments. Let's go back to school. Let's talk about some of that more in depth, because I feel like a lot of people struggle at school, but you kind of went through a lot of altercations and adversities at that time. What were some of the things you were hearing, some of the bullying, some of the racism, the experiences that you had that felt limiting or made it feel like it was easier to give up?
I think for me, school was probably the most traumatizing and most difficult part of my life.
Wow.
I already was being bullied at the age of 6. I think at the time, that particular school, I was probably one of 3 kids of color, and just bigger, stronger, bullying kids were throwing me around a lot of the time. I was always the last picked in when you're standing in the playground and you're in the line of when they're picking teams for football, I was always the last one chosen or not even chosen, even if I was better than somebody else. And then the constant jabs, the things that are either thrown at you like bananas, or people that would use the M-word just so relaxed. People calling you half-caste and, just really not knowing where you fit in. That for me was difficult. When you then go into like history class and everything you learn in history, there are no people of color in the history that they were teaching us. So I was thinking, oh, well, where are the people that look like me? And I mean, for me, in my school, there was only around 7, maybe 6, 7 black kids out of 1,200 kids. And 3 of us were put outside the headmaster's office all the time. The headmaster just had it out for us, and particularly for me, I would say. So like just juggling all these different emotions that you're feeling. Plus I struggled at school. I didn't find out till I was 16 that I was dyslexic. Fortunately, I came across a teacher that was actually caring and took me down that road and helped me discover a little bit more about myself and how I can better myself through education. But I think that for me was tough. Also, because I was racing every weekend, I would leave on the Thursday night. We would travel, pack up the motorhome. We would travel around the country to race on the weekends. And no one else knew. When I'd get back to school, all the kids have done normal things on the weekend. And I'll come back and say I was racing, and people would be like, "Oh, I've done that before," like at the theme park or something. But no one really knew what my goal was, and they thought maybe it was a joke. You miss a lot of that social interaction. Also, I was put in all the lowest sets at school and told that if you do well, you can progress, and they never ever let me progress, no matter how hard I tried. So I really felt that the system was really up against me, and I was kind of swimming against the tide. But I'm so grateful for that journey, because that's what built me to the person that I am today. But there were a lot of things that I suppressed, because I couldn't go home and say, hey, I didn't feel I could go home and tell my parents that, these kids kept calling me the N-word today. I got bullied. I got beaten up at school today, or I wasn't able to defend myself. I didn't want my dad to think I was not strong. And so I would, if I had tears, I would hold them back. If I had emotions, it would be in a quiet place. And it wasn't really till I started racing that I was able to channel this emotion that I had into my driving. And it's like when I put this helmet on, Superman was my favorite. I loved how he fought for the people, and I loved how he did the right things, and he was a really inspiring character for me. But again, no superhero was of color, so but you can still aspire to be someone that's, if they don't look like you, and so I remember going to karate. I remember putting this helmet on in racing, and it felt like it was my cloak, that my superpowers could come out when I was driving, and I was battling with these kids, and I was able to do things that they seemed to not be able to do as well. And that was my love.
That's so hard as a kid when you're going through that and you're trying to find yourself, you're trying to figure out what confidence is, you don't even know what that means, you feel like not going to school. But then even though you're saying you found it in racing, I mean, racing was similar because you were working class, you're still to this day the only working class black driver to do as successfully as you have. So not only do you have it at school, you also have it in your passion, like in the thing that is your cloak, is your Superman. So how does it feel when you're also dealing with it in that area where you've discovered what your passion or your interest is at that age? What does it feel like when you're getting it in that space?
It's inescapable. You use that as an escape, but then you're confronted with it also. And so I was just grateful that I had this amazing figure in my dad. I got one of my best friends, like his dad was never there. I know there's not many people that have separated parents, and being shared between parents is not an easy thing. Some days with your mom and some days with your dad. My mom was the soft, loving parent. So that's where I feel like I learned a lot of compassion and empathy. That's where I feel like I get it from her. And my dad was that strong, like kind of stronger rock. And also just someone that looked like me and just, he would say, do your talking on the track. Don't be distracted by it. Don't listen to what they're saying. Do your driving on the track and let's just be quiet and walk away as winners, So, but, again, like your parents, my parents went through, well, particularly my dad was someone that also faced adversity through his life. And he's like, I want to do everything in my power to create a better life for my kid so that they don't feel or experience the things that I've encountered and through my journey. And so, but I think for me it was also difficult having biracial, I'm biracial, so having a white mother, for example, and a black dad. I knew my dad would understand the racial slurs that are thrown at me. My mum couldn't understand it. So I couldn't really speak to my mum about it. She was loving, but she had never been educated within it. She didn't know anything about black history and slavery. And so it was a very difficult, but I had love there, which was the most important thing.
Yeah.
But in the racing, it was like, like kids, you just want to enjoy yourself. You want to be included. And, when you're kind of outcast a little bit, it's difficult for kids, And so that's why today, I'm like, if I'm posting something, I hope that when I do click that button, I hope that it is a positive wave for some of the kids out there that are being distracted by all the stuff that's going on around the world.
Yeah. I mean, I was telling you earlier, I was so grateful. Came out to watch you in Austin a couple of weeks ago and got to meet your dad. And I'd heard you talk about your dad in that way before. And so when I met him, it was just, it was nice to share that with him. And I was just saying how beautiful it is to see your relationship and how it's evolved.
It's not always been that way.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. To walk us through whatever you feel.
My dad has been like the leader in getting me, he had 4 jobs at one stage just to keep us go-karting. Because when we all started go-karting, majority of the people were from working class families. But then there are, of course, a few wealthier kids that have slightly better access to equipment and mechanics and all those sorts of things. And my dad was my mechanic. So it was just me and him on the road, and my stepmom, Linda, she would be there supporting, making sure that we're fully clothed, making sure that we've eaten and we're hydrated, all those sorts of things for the weekend, preparing my kit. So it was very much a family outing. It was a family kind of family weekend. We did it as a family. We'd travel together. My little brother would be on the road with us as well, who's a mega inspiration. You've definitely got to speak to him one day. Born with cerebral palsy. when I was 7 and is a speaker today. So he's racing. He's defined all the odds, and
Wow.
even though he's 7 years younger than me, still very much an inspiration. But the thing with my dad was he was my manager all the way till I was like 20. We got to Formula One, and he worked so hard. His work ethic for me was inspiring for me, seeing how hard he worked. The time he gets up in the morning, the little sleep that he would have, end of his day in the garage working on the go-kart, preparing for the weekend, packing up the truck, and getting us to where we are, mechanicking, learning to be a better mechanic, and still weighing all these different things. It was quite phenomenal to see. But I think it was difficult for him to then show me love. Sometimes you just want a hug from your dad, or when you're facing these things, you want to be able to be embraced. But when I got to when I was 22, 23, it got really intense when I got to Formula One, because all of a sudden you're thrown into, you go through karting and cars. You don't go to school to learn to speak to the media. You're literally thrown into the pit. And at the time, I didn't have management other than my dad. My stepmom would book flights and trips, but I didn't have PR. I didn't have anybody to help protect me or prepare me for things. Driving, I was good. I was set. But in these things is where a lot of mistakes happened. You've got the kind of all the media attention, and so you're just learning on the go, which was very difficult for a youngster, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also you wanted to try and live some sort of normal life, but nothing's normal for you at the time. And I think for me and my dad, we're really bumping heads at one stage. It's like, I really just want you to be my dad so let's go and have fun. Let's go and have a laugh. But we hadn't had that for a long, long time. And so eventually I decided to part ways with my dad, and I was like, I'm going to start making some of the decisions for myself and the mistakes that I'm going to need to make. And there was definitely a period of time where we spoke less. But we both have worked so hard to come back together. And we have one of the greatest, he's the first person I want to call when I finish a race. Because I know he knows what it's like. He was there from day one. And so, he's been to the last 2 races with me. He's probably going to come to the next one. There's days where I do feel like I'm not enough. There's days where I don't feel like I'm good enough. And people will be like, yeah, but you've won 7 world titles. And I'm like, yeah, but still, there's days where I question, no, you still got it. Can you still be the best? Yes, you can. And so I have to I'm having that conversation with myself often. But my dad's also there. Sometimes I'll say something that's maybe not the most positive, and he'll be the one there just reaffirming, no, you've got this. Believe in yourself. And it's so important for people to have people like that around them. And I surround myself with other positive people as well, and we continue. I think it's all our job to lift everyone up, right? I want everyone around me to win and to become the best versions of themselves. So